Hi everyone, welcome back. Someone who's got the profile picture that actually looks like the real person on stage. That's a bit of a novelty, isn't it? Just noticed that. Okay, so hope you enjoyed your lunch. We've got various sessions coming up this afternoon, starting right now with a fireside discussion between myself and Adam Reed, Chief Sustainability and External Affairs Officer at Suez. Now, I do have a bio here, but I figure, seeing as Adam's here, he may as well tell us himself. So tell us who you are and what you do, and if anyone hasn't heard of Suez, just talk us through.
Yeah, sure. Suez is a global waste management, resource management company. So there's a good chance we either collect your bins or process your recyclables or turn your residual waste into energy. So everything from collecting, treating and disposing in a most economically, environmentally and socially acceptable way, of course. What do? Well, I've been there 6 years. For my sins, I was an environmental consultant for many years. But I look after government engagement for the last 6 years, so lots of policy reforms in packaging, waste and environment more generally. So lots of engagement, lots of conversations, lots of frustrations, lots of coffee. And over the last couple of years, I've grown the sustainability team within the company here in the UK. And so we're giving advice to our operations, we're working with our supply chains, and we're generally making sure that we're doing the best we possibly can as a business across all of our facilities, sites and services to leave the best legacy, which can be difficult when you're a waste management company and everybody thinks you'll hump it and lump it, or you're just dirty end-of-pipe solutions. So hopefully we're doing some good stuff, but yeah, it can be tough. Thanks for the invite.
Well, I was going to say you clearly are doing some good stuff, because that's one of the reasons why you're here today. So why don't you tell us how you've implemented a sustainability strategy and what impact that's had?
Yeah, well, I get asked, I mean, it's interesting. I put sustainability, or Chief Sustainability Officer went in the title only in January. I've never been so popular on LinkedIn. I get more emails with people selling me tools or toolkits I didn't know I needed. So obviously the change of title means a lot to some people, even if it doesn't mean a lot to the company. I want to tell you why. As a company that specialises in resource management, you'd think we get sustainability. It is the DNA for a company like ours. But actually, in my sector, you've got a huge variation in what drives the businesses. I'd like to think the people that work for Suez, many of whom have been there a very long time, we're a very stable business in that respect, are there because they want to support either their local community or the environment. And that includes the accountants, the people that are sitting in the HR function. They could work anywhere, but they choose to work with us because I think they feel comfortable that we're doing the right thing as often as possible. So have I got a sustainability strategy? No, because we're a triple bottom line business. And for the last 3 years, we've been very open with our customers and our supply chain and, of course, our staff that we judge all investment decisions. We make all major operational decisions around the 3 people, planet, profit agendas. So we won't just do something because it's economically the best option. You've got to be able to show that you've gone through the evaluation in terms of community, staff, and environmental performance. And so no strategy, but an embedded strategy that we'd like to think makes us a little bit different from some of our peers and makes it a little bit more real for most of our staff.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So if you don't have a strategy, can you maybe tell us a couple of examples?
Yeah, so what we have got, a couple of things. One, 4 or 5 years ago, we decided that you needed to take a business on a journey. That everybody needs to have clarity about what are your priorities. So we had critical success factors, and we had 8. And one of them is customer centricity. For a business like ours, we've got to be all about the customer. But one of them was environment. So we made the environment 5-6 years ago an important criteria that everybody in the business would have a target of some relation to the environment. And it would depend on what your job is. So, it would be specific, but it would be appropriate. And for the last 5 years, you've had to report on that in your half-yearly review. You've had to report on that on your annual review. But more importantly, divisions within the business and teams within the business would have targets specific to the environment or customer centricity or improving their IT, for example. There are others, but they're 3 that spring to mind. So environment was embedded, and over time environment became environment and social, because we recognised that the community dimension, particularly when we were looking at things like reuse, repair, retraining, not just supporting the communities we collect and treat waste from, but the communities that were then becoming a key employer or a key partner on a journey needed to also be seen in that kind of target area. So that became a critical success factor alongside environment. Last year, we recognised that those critical success factors have become embedded. Everybody in the business was doing lean because it was a critical success factor. They were all looking for efficiency gains or improvements in performance. You could go onto any site and talk to any member of staff, and they would recognise that environment was important and would point to some birds, some bees, and such like. There was something on every site or every team, there's a green roof, or there was some water recycling that they had been instigating or been involved in, and they could feel pride for. So we were like, great, we've got a baseline, people are engaged, people are involved. We were starting to create teams of champions that were working together to share best practice. So then we set, as I said, 18 months, 12 months ago, we set 9 strategic goals, because what the company's staff were saying to us was, and some of our customers, so you've got these themes, you've got these big picture journeys that you're going on. It makes a lot of sense. It's how you define what you are. But tell me what you're doing around decarbonisation, or tell me what you're doing in terms of reinvesting in R&D. So ultimately, we came up with 9 strategic goals. These are the goals that, yes, there's lots of KPIs below that and lots of other performance indicators that make up your 9. But these 9 are how we're defining ourselves. So if you want to ask us, are we making progress on anything, we'll always relate it to the 9. And 3 of those 9 are environmental, carbon being one of them, reuse and repair being one of them, resource use being one of them. But 3 of them are also social, reflecting that critical success factor that we'd embedded 5 years earlier. So we talk about the social value that we're creating as a business, but we're also talking about our staff and their training and their engagement and their long-term career planning. So we've started to identify key areas of our business that have to go forward for us to be sustainable long-term. And these are the things that our staff and our customers are saying that they're important to them, and so we now recognise them as our key targets. And they get tracked on they can track them on a weekly basis, but ultimately we report monthly and quarterly. And Opcom, which is the UK board, we sit down every month and we take a deep dive on at least one of those to see what's working and what's not. And at the regional conferences that we do every year, so this year we went to 5 regions, we spent a whole day with 300-400 staff in each session. All we talked about was the 9 strategic goals. All we talked about were the examples of best practice, the things that we were proud of on one site or in one geography, and how you could replicate them. So when you ask me what's the example, I'd say my sustainability champions are the exemplar for what we do. Because you may want to have, a rewilding of your grass verges perhaps, or you may want to, decarbonise your local food supply chain, or you may want to go vegan with your on-site lunches. Great. But it's the champions, these are the committed volunteers that get a little bit of time and a little bit of budget to make stuff happen, who coordinate across the region, who talk to each other about what works. They're the thing I'm most proud of, because actually they're the embodiment, they're the living exemplar of our sustainability opportunity.
So that's interesting. I was going to ask you this. I was thinking, how do you incentivise those members of staff to do it? You talked there about a little bit of budget, a little bit of time. But yeah, what's the incentive to get everybody on board in 5 years or whatever it was?
Yeah, so I've got 6,000 staff. I've got 300 champions. I'd love to get 6,000 champions, but A, might not have the budget, and B, we might not get the job done, because it can be a distraction for some of them from critical frontline staff. Let's remember, I've got 1,000 people that collect bins. I've got something like 700 drivers. So creating time and space for them to be sustainability champions isn't always easy. And so they're the last, I wouldn't say we're leaving them, but they're the last group that we target. We need to give them information. We need to showcase what we're doing, because some of them are very, very keen, but we don't want to drag them through a journey that perhaps they're not ready for at the moment. So we've got these champions, and yeah, as I said, I mean, they get a £500 uplift or something similar, and we give them, a day a month dedicated out of their operational life to get on with it. I've got accountants, I've got site supervisors, I've got a refuse collection team leader. I've got a couple of people who do sustainability for a day job. I've got half a dozen procurement people. They're doing it because they want to. And I think for us, it was about starting with that desire and recognising that people with an interest are the ones that you can motivate quickly. So it's not about the money. It's not about giving them lots of training. It's not about, building their external profile, all of which we can do, by the way. But it's about enabling them to do great stuff because they want to do great stuff. So giving them the information, giving them the toolkits, upskilling them at times is absolutely pertinent. So, beekeeping best practice. Well, why would you run that on one site when you could put that training on across multiple sites? We created an app so they could track their activities, but then that app became more than just tracking their activities. It became a way of logging lots of people's activities and getting other people involved. So empowering those that want it and then using them to grow the momentum around them, because it's surprising how many other people went, oh, actually, this is quite good stuff. How do I get involved in whatever that activity might be on whatever the site, whether it be Bodmin Moor or Aberdeen, there's something local that you go, I like that. And then those opportunities then grow because somebody says, have you seen this? And, that network for me is fascinating because everybody's got sustainability built into them. It's just whether or not you can enable it and encourage it. And I think we've kind of started to tap that enthusiasm, and we now need to build that and coordinate it. You can't just let it all run wild. We put on the training side. I think it's what's interesting to incentivise some people. We put our first sustainability conference on last year after having done this kind of thing for 4 or 5 years. And we brought the best of the best, and they were self-selecting by the amount of activity, the amount of impact that they could showcase. And so we brought them to the Botanical Gardens in Birmingham, showcasing, again, great environmental, great sustainability activities. We gave them awards, recognition. They got put up on the internal notice board. They got something to put on the shelf back in the office. But more importantly, we got to showcase what they were doing, and they got to network. And some of them are now going on green procurement training. Some of them are going on IEMA sustainability training, because actually they've never been anywhere near a course that's got environmental in it because they're an accountant or because they're a people manager or whatever it might be. So, you're harnessing their inherent desire and filling in some of the gaps.
So how did you choose these champions in the first place? Was it voluntary?
Voluntary, very much so. They put themselves forward because they were already doing some stuff or trying to. We already, and you overlay that with a group of people that were working with my sustainability team, a team of 2 at the time. We knew that there were champions who weren't champions by name, but they were already pushing the boundaries in terms of activity. So it was about then harnessing them and saying, we're thinking about this program. Is this the kind of thing that would help? And actually, we got a resounding feedback from people that we knew were interested in this space. And that's what gave us the impetus to go, well, okay, let's create this volunteer program, but then give it the time and budget that makes it fly. And this year we're growing that, so I've got another person coming in to coordinate their activities because there's so much going on across so many sites that you could end up almost replicating good practice but not learning from it. And my job is to encourage us to learn from the activities here and make sure that the best of that gets replicated and we don't, reinvent the wheel too often, because it's easy to get carried away with good news, isn't it? And people feeling good about themselves, but sometimes that can detract from the day job, unfortunately, and we've got to make sure it's efficient and effective.
Okay, so what's the best thing that you've learned then? You talk about, learnings and then sharing that learning. Let's say in the last year, what's the best thing that you've learned from this program?
So, for me, as somebody that's sustainably trained, I've got a geography degree and I got an environmental science PhD. I think it was the behavioural side of this, and triple bottom line, sustainability has behaviour. It's inherent, doesn't it? Appreciation, understanding, and behaviour. I think it was the ability for a group of people who are disparate in location and role and who actually would never have met each other to suddenly create a momentum that mean we've got bird boxes and beehives on hundreds of sites in a 12-month period. And for me, that's about people going, I can do it, can you help me? And then going, and I'll help you. And it's been the ability for, one regional champion to motivate 20 of these site champions to all go the extra yard. And, collaborative work around litter picks. We've had hundreds of people on beaches in Cornwall and Devon doing litter picks collaboratively because you just join the dots. And suddenly it's not just a Suez activity, because that would be wrong if it was just my staff out there. But you've got community, you've got volunteer groups, you've got schools all coming together to go out and do the right thing in a geography. And that, for me, I think is quite empowering, because you go, whereas maybe I was becoming a little cynical in my age, can we change the world? I think you can, and bottom up is showing just how collaborative people are still willing to be. Small changes will make a lot of difference, and I think you've got to remember that.
Well, this is all super positive, isn't it? There's got to be a downside to this, Adam, surely.
Yeah, it's not free. And it does take time and effort, and I've got a team that help corral and cajole and encourage and nudge. There's nothing like a bit of nudge, is there? And realistically, I've got an app, and it's a great app. It was designed specifically for us to capture environmental activity, social opportunity, so we could try and capture at a headline how big is our footprint, the good news story. I know how much waste I handle, but what sort of good stuff that we're doing? I haven't quite got everybody using the app fully. So at the moment, I know I'm under-reporting, but it's hard to know how under-reported we are. And that's probably my biggest challenge. And the second question is always middle management. I'll leave it there, shall I? Just let it hang. Any middle management in the room? Yeah, no, because they don't come out to play, do they? Middle management, I love them dearly because they're very effective at running businesses. What they're not so great at is looking outside their silo. And I think we've got bottom-up sustainability champions. I've got top-down operation, board, direction of travel. And actually in the middle, you've got dudes and dudettes who are still trying to deliver value for money. And sometimes there's a bit of tension. And that's a great tension because there's a learning curve. We can't change everybody overnight. But, what is the most important to them? I think sometimes they don't get the 3 pillars of sustainability quite right. But that's okay. That gives us something to work on. And that's honest.
Okay, one more question from my side. Let's say, I think you've converted a lot of people in the audience and joining us online here as well. What single piece of advice would you give to an organisation or a chief sustainability officer who's thinking, I like the sound of this, I'm going to do something similar?
2 pieces of advice. One is ping me a message, and then I'll let my team loose with you for a couple of hours, and you'll be surprised at just all the great stuff you can do that's very low cost and quite low risk, I would suggest. From a personal perspective, I'd say just do it and start small. One champion, one activity, one good news story. Get it on the intranet or whatever social platform you're using with your staff. Get a few people to showcase it to your board. Get them to have lunch with your local staff, because suddenly you're creating momentum. And for me, momentum's everything, because once the board realised that this was great, staff engagement, great. Customers were loving it when they were coming on site, great. You're not backing out, are you? We're not having a U-turn anytime soon. And that's perfect, because I think that gives you the confidence that year 2 can be better, and year 3 you're going to grow. And that for me is, I've got 5-year targets now to move the agenda forward. And you can only do that if you're certain that, A, your company's still going to be operating 5 years from now. Sustainability is important to a lot of my customers and staff. But B, that you've got a program of work that's going to build, because stagnation will alienate some of your customers and some of your staff. And the momentum at the moment is such that you wouldn't want to slow down, would you?
Okay. Easy, exactly. Easy, say the audience. Well, Adam, you've made it sound easy. Fantastic session. Thank you so much. Adam, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.